The doors to the Viridian tea house are open once more. Hello everyone, it's another Tuesday. I hope you guys are doing well. I'm doing pretty all right, can't complain. Well, I got quite a bit to talk about this video session, so without further ado, let's begin. The two books that I'm going to be reviewing today, c'est magnifique. One is hardcore sci-fi, one is hardcore fantasy, but both truly excellent works, and they're both the beginning of a series. So if you pick up one of these books or both of these books and you have to have more, there are more books in the series. So, all right, so let's go with the sci-fi, shall we? So I met the author of this first book at Cosign. And again, I really love that convention. It's in Colorado Springs. It's in January. I actually drove through a snowstorm to get to Colorado Springs. I think I've talked about this before. And by the time I arrived at the hotel, got checked in, went to the dealer's room to set up, the sun was out and all the snow had melted. I was like, Colorado. Anyway, this one author was very cool, very nice, and it took me several months to get to the book, but once I did, let me just get started. So this is the first book. It's called The Matilda, and the author is John Gray Lang. And let me just read the back of it for you. Smuggler, fugitive, cyborg, bounty hunter. Far off into the future in a distant part of the galaxy, the consortium controls the human colonies held together by the jump gates. Where the consortium doesn't hold sway, crime flourishes. Through the use of a hellish engine that goes where no one should, the crew of the Matilda slips its way between the two. But nothing has gone smoothly after they broke out one of their own off a prison ship. Fighting their way past shadowy government agencies and a dangerous crime lord, monstrosities from an unknown layer of the universe seem dead, set to break through into ours. When their past come back to haunt them, can Jacquot Delahaye, sorry about that, and her crew of misfits come together as they are attacked from all sides? Will the galaxy work hand in hand with them to survive the alien onslaught? Strap yourself in for a bumpy ride in the first book of the series, The Matilda. So, once again, this is the first book in the series. And let me just say that it took me a while to get into. Like, I'd actually tried to read it like once before, but the formatting was just a little bit off. And for some reason, my eyes just weren't connecting that well. I mean, but then again, personal preference. When I tried to read it the second time, I said, okay, just go with the flow of the story. Don't worry about anything else. I found I truly had to strap myself in for a ride. It was a fantastic sci-fi read. You know, what's interesting is that when I got into sci-fi and fantasy, I gravitated toward more of the fantasy. Sci-fi, I was like, not really my thing. Then I read Dune and, all hail the spice. But I started reading more sci-fi books because I'm a big fan of Star Wars. I love Star Trek. I was like, well, duh. Mike Kapari comes to mind, one of the best sci-fi writers out there. Love your work. I'm just going to be broke because of you. So with this book, it was a ragtag group of misfits and even a what do they call her? The Butcher. I can't remember her full title. Wait a minute. This will just take a minute. Let's see. It was The Butcher of Timony Bay. I really, really like that character because she's not human. I mean, she looks human, but she's not human. So it was very interesting to see her interact with her soon to become crew family, especially dealing with alcohol. I really thought that was a trip, but I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the characters. I loved how even though they didn't trust each other, or in particular, two people didn't trust each other, they still looked out for each other. And there were a lot of backhand deals, and I really, really enjoyed the space in between. If there was ever a great sci-fi version of hell, this was it. I really, really enjoyed how, yeah, on the one hand, escaping to this in-between meant that you could escape your pursuers, but there was also what was waiting for you in that space. So thoroughly enjoyed the Matilda. Like I said, this is book number 1, and the author is John Gray Lang. So for this, it gets Viridian tea houses, 5 pots of tea. Thank you so much. And like I say with all the other series that I devour, I will be giving you money very soon. Trust me, I will. So once again, the Matilda, book number 1 by John Gray Lang, receives 5 pots of tea from Viridian Tea House. So here's the cover one more time. Go out and get it, kiddies. Go out and get it. And actually, there's a website on here. It's machinesoftheinfinitepress.com. Check that out too. All right, so now we leave the heavens and the stars for the fantasy earth or world. So there's a story behind this one. I actually helped with the editing of this book when it first came out through Dark Oak Press. And I really enjoyed the story. It kind of reminded me of like your typical, not typical fantasy story, like battle royale in a way, because it was just like, okay, who's gonna die next? Who's gonna be killed next? But I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed being a part of the process of bringing this book to fruition. And so far, there are 2 other books in this series. And from what I understand, the author will be working on another one. Is that what you told me? I hope so. What am I talking about? I am talking about the Cycle of Ages saga, and the first book is called Finders Keepers. And this was written by Jeremy Hicks and Barry Hayes, which, side note, I kept calling Barry Hayes Barry Reese from Pro Se Productions, who writes the awesome Lazarus Grace series. My publisher was like, no, it's not Barry Reese, it's Barry Hayes. I was like, don't. Anyway, so this is the first book in the series. And let me read the back of it for you. Caladimus, I hope I said that right, Jeremy. Caladimus Dor, both dopey and dangerous, finds himself racing home across the sea aboard the mighty caravel Nightsfall. He must return with the secretive contents of the chest in his possession to his home on the island of Mordru. Unfortunately, his disastrous nature, they call him Master of Disaster for a reason, his disastrous nature shipwrecks him and the survivors on an island full of ravenous inhabitants, both living and undead. Dor allies himself with members of the Finders Keepers Mercenary Guild and others to search for the hallowed vessel, their only means of escape from the nightmare. That's putting it lightly. I first read this book years ago, and aside from editing it, I read it and I loved it. And but then years pass and you're like, I kind of remember fragments of that story. So I just said, you know what, I'm just going to read the trilogy again. I do remember reading books 1 and 2. I don't think I've read book 3. So that's going to be a whole new experience for me. I loved Finders Keepers. I loved it. My favorite characters, of course, Dor, Master of Disaster. I love Yax, the elf. He's just such a badass. I mean, you're just like, there are elves and then there's you. And I also, and I remembered this, I have a soft spot for Sir Kale. I truly do. I knew in reading this again what was going to happen to him, and I really didn't want it to happen. I'll be honest. I liked how, with each of the characters as the situation unfolds, you see them transform due to the circumstances that they were thrust into. Sir Kale, you watch the change, and you knew the change was happening all from the beginning, but as you watch it, you're like, you really are a good guy. you're not a nice guy, but you're a good guy. And I think there's a difference, but that's a whole different video show. Anyway, I really enjoyed Sir Kale. I really enjoyed Yax, and I love Dor as always. But this is a great beginning to a fantasy series. And if you're looking for monsters and other monsters that are undead, I won't go into it, other monsters that are undead, and that whole ragtag company of people who come together for a myriad of purposes, but then they all kind of unite under one purpose. And in this case, it's the search for the hallowed vessel, also known as Sea Dragon. It was a great story. You felt as though you were right there with them, suffering every moment of torment and some happiness and some funny times and some not so great times too. Well, like with the Matilda, there's backstabbing, there's taking up the cause, there's a lot of gore, there's just like the Matilda too. But yes, it's just one of those fantasy books where if you suddenly find yourself, you're off for the day or from work or something, or you suddenly find a day schedule to be suddenly clear, this is a good book to kind of sit down on your couch, play some jazz in the background, have endless cups of tea, and just read. Because once you open this book, you're no longer on your couch. And the same thing with Matilda. Once you open this book, you're not on your couch anymore. These two books are a great way to escape. Just a couple of hours where all you have is silence in your home and the words on these pages. So for Finders Keepers by Jeremy Hicks and Barry Hayes, it gets Viridian Tea Houses 5 pots of tea. Thank you so much. And it's funny because Jeremy messaged me before I recorded saying, "Is it live yet?" I'm like, "No, it's not. I haven't even recorded it yet." I was too busy. I'm sorry. But yes, you need to get a copy of this book. And actually, their publishing house or company is called Broke Guys Publishing. So check that out. I do know that Jeremy is on Facebook, but if you type in Broke Guys Publishing, just in a regular internet search, you can find all the books. The first 3 books are available. There's Finders Keepers, there's Sands of Sorrow, which is the second one, and the third one is behind me, which I don't feel like getting up, but yes, you can see all 3. And actually, there's a new cover for the first book. So if you don't see this one, but you're like, well, it says Finders Keepers, it's the same one. So once again, thank you so much, Jeremy. I'm enjoying the second book. I don't remember a lot of it, but I'm enjoying it. So thank you again. All right, so on to the tea portion. I don't have an outside tea to review, but I am releasing a new tea from my company, Viridian Tea Company. So I've talked about it before, but I have returned to the world of the violin, and this time it seems as though it's growing exponentially into something that I'm like, this is crazy. I love it. So my plucky imaginary friend, Tea Muse, if you follow my blog, Eccentric Tea Woman, you can find the link on my Instagram profile. You can go to the blog and read the sections called Adventures with My Tea Muse and see what's going on with her. But it's turning into something else now, because apparently I have a new muse, and her name is Frederica. And actually, make sure this is Frederica. I picked her up several years ago at an estate sale, and I'd actually had a rental violin some time ago, and I had to turn it in for a myriad of reasons. So when I saw this one, I thought, well, you know, I think I'm gonna purchase her. Well, it at the time. But since getting back into the violin and being a violin student, thank you, Nadia. Thank you, Denver Violins. Thank you so much. This has become a living entity in a way. So, and if you follow me on social media, you know that I named Frederica after one of the characters in an A.S. Byatt quartet. One of the characters is named Frederica, and her personality reminds me of my violin. So why am I showing you my violin? Well, it has to do with the new tea blend. It is called, make sure I get all this right, rosin, which is what we use on the bow. Rosin and bow is the new blend. And let me just read the label to you. It is a smoky black tea, which I get specifically from Asami Tea Shop. They're one of the best companies out there regarding African teas because they work directly with the farmers. So I've worked with Asami Tea Shop before. We've had a working relationship for several years. So thank you so much for the smoky black tea. So it's smoky black tea, dried orange peel, allspice, cacao nibs, and ginger. And a picture of Frederica is actually on the label too. So this is the first time, excuse me for a minute, it is kind of warm in here. This is the first time I am trying rosin and bow in my lovely Celestial Dragon mug. Get my rosin out of the way, I don't want to mess it up. Here we go. Ooh. And not just because I made this. So what I'm getting, very much the smoky part of the black tea, but it's not like sucking on a cigarette. It makes me think of fall in a way. It makes me think of sweaters and watching the leaves fall and they crunch under your feet as you walk through the forest. And then everything else, that's very interesting. Sorry, sweating again. Ooh, it's really hot here in Denver. So what I'm getting is the smoky black tea is at the forefront, but it's not overpowering. Like I said, it's not sucking on a cigarette, but then all the other ingredients come right after it, and it's a nice blend to kind of support, I like making that motion, to support the smoky black tea. This is interesting because usually I can get like one flavor, then another flavor, then another flavor, and it just kind of flows together. But I can kind of tell when each ingredient hits. This, it's like smoky black, and then everything else just kind of comes in and supports it. And this is a very smooth cup of tea. This is very smooth. And what's also interesting too, you know, I'm wondering if me drinking hot tea in the middle of summer is the reason why I'm sweating. But anyway, with every sip, I'm getting a different ingredient that's kind of coming behind the smoky black. The smoky black is still at the forefront, but each sip, it's like, okay, more of the ginger, okay, more of the orange peel. The cacao nibs I'm not getting, but I've also noticed too that when tea cools in temperature, other ingredients will start to rise toward the surface. So now I'm getting the cacao nib. That's very interesting. The cacao nib and the orange. This is quite good. So anyway, my new blend, rosin and bow, inspired by my lovely violin Frederica, and also the rosin, of course, and bow that I use to play Frederica is soon going to be available once I'm done with this video. So hold on to your hats, kiddies. It's probably going to be a while, but it is going to be available hopefully by the end of today. Let's see. Oh, yes, one more thing. Speaking of tea, I want to introduce to you a new friend of mine, friend as it were. So, oh, excuse me. Man, I am really sweating. Good grief. So, a friend of mine at work saw me interact with something. I'm being very vague right now. Saw me interact with something and was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to buy this for her. And she did. And I've kept it in my office, and I'm like, I want to give it a different name because I know it has a name, but I want to give it a different name that's more Viridian Tea Company, more of me. So say hello to Lemongrass. Its real name, it is a jelly cat. I think the company is in England, but its real name, its original name, is Medium Bashful Lamb. So no copyright issues, but just with me, it's Lemongrass now. So you may see Lemongrass in posts and photos involving tea or the violin or books or whatever. But yeah, it's really nice to come into my office and see Lemongrass staring at me. And I'm like, hi, Lemongrass, how are you? Can you talk? Oh my gosh, please don't answer. Anyway, let's see. I'm trying to think, was there anything else? My apologies for the sweating, but for some reason I got really, really hot. So sorry about that. I think that's it. So once again, let me put Frederica, just stare at it one more time. She is so beautiful. And I am very happy to admit that I can play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star 80% well. I had to think about it. I'm like, how many times did I scratch the notes? 80%. I'm really good at 80%. So put you down right there. Okay, so once again, much thanks to Jeremy Hicks and Barry Hayes for Finders Keepers, and also to John Gray Lang for the Matilda. All right, so I think to wrap this up, let's do a quiet and cooling meditation. So find yourself in a comfortable position, either seated or standing up or lying down, preferably with air conditioning. And if you have some tea that's already made, please grab that. And what we're going to do is just take a deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth twice. Close your eyes, and if you don't want to close your eyes, you can just softly focus on an object. And then just breathe. If you have any thoughts that want to linger in your mind, just silently tell yourself thinking and allow the thought to go by. But just focus on the breath. If you're ready, let's begin. Now to end this breathing meditation, just take one deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. Slowly open your eyes. And if you have tea, take a nice sip. And we're done. Wipe myself one more time. Ooh, Lord. Phew. Just a little side note. I did not realize this in moving to Colorado, but a lot of houses in the state did not have air conditioning built into the houses because the temperatures weren't really that bad during the summertime. So our house has no air conditioning. So we have a lot of fans, but you know, I will say this summer has not been too bad. I mean, we've had some moments where it was really hot, but we had low humidity. And then literally like the next day we'll have a storm and the temperatures drop to the 60s. So right now I think it's in the 90s. So my apologies again for sweating during this video. You're probably like, what is wrong with her? Okay, really? Are you that excited? So once again, like I said, my apologies for the sweating. I can't control this. I would have a fan on in the back, but I'd be talking really loudly, and I don't think you want to hear that. So again, thanks to Asami Tea for the lovely addition to Rosin and Bow Tea Blend from Viridian Tea Company. Also thanks to John Gray Lang and also Jeremy Hicks and Barry Hayes. Thank you so, so much. And until next time, take care of yourself and each other. Find some air conditioning. Raise your teacup high. And I'll see you soon. Bye, everybody. Ooh, I'm hot.